This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for October 19th, 2023, Season 13, Lucky Season 13, Episode number 2, and Episode 387 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. I am your host, Bob Howard. Thank you very much for joining me this week. I am very excited for the show. First of all, we get to break down the first game of the season, which I just ran the numbers, and they've won all 3 home openers in the first 3 seasons of the Binghamton Black Bears. So that's a very cool stat and everything. So at home is where they like to play, and so far they've won all 3 home openers in the Visions Veterans Memorial Arena, which is pretty cool. So, but we got a great show. But let's talk a little about the things I need to talk about first. First of all, the Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search the Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast and subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to the Facebook and search for Power Play Post Show and share of any of our show posts or any of the posts that we post on there to all your friends. Check out BinghamtonHockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And, of course, on this episode of the Power Play Post Show, I'm very excited to have with me today. And I had a nice, long conversation with him. Some that you will hear, some that you won't hear. But from the Binghamton Black Bears, the Director of Media Relations and Broadcasting, he, is, of course, is Brooks Hill. We talked a little bit about where he grew up down in Wake Forrest, North Carolina. About him, I'll tell you right now, I don't know how much of this really makes the air because we talked 2 different times. But he loves lacrosse. Lacrosse is like one of his passions. He played it in college, and as he was becoming a broadcaster and everything in college, he played lacrosse. He played lacrosse in high school. And so very interesting. Brooks Hill on the show this week. Very glad to have him on. I got to meet him for the first time really in person last week for Media Day, and he did such a great job. And, you know, he walked into a really tough situation. He had only a couple weeks to get ready for the season last year. And he admits some things went a little rough, but I think the really benefit of him going through everything he went through last year is that this first game just really went off really well. At least from a viewer standpoint, the first game looked really good on YouTube. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. There was some stuff that happened during the day today. This is Wednesday evening as I'm recording this, so guys can all listen to this on Thursday and Friday and Saturday as you're doing your normal things. But there was a little bit of news that kind of broke earlier today. We'll get to that first, but I really want to talk about the breakdown of last week's win over the Elmira River Sharks. Binghamton wins the first game of the season. It is at the home opener, 7-3. Connor Smith had a stellar game, in my opinion. 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points, and had 8 shots on goal. We'll talk a little bit about the lineups a little bit later, but he was on a great line with Brendan Stanko and, of course, Thomas Ray, who was playing in his first professional hockey game. Speaking of shots on goal, because Connor Smith did have 8 shots on goal, the team won the shot on goal category 61-35, and Brendan Stanko had 11 shots of his own. which was pretty impressive. I mean, just listen, you put pucks on net, you're going to score eventually, and that's what Brendan Stanko did, and he scored his first professional goal. He didn't get one last year at all, and it was good to see him get right on the board early, right? Some of these guys who got that first goal this season, it's done. It's over with. They can move on. Now they can just play their game. They don't have to worry about getting that first goal. Nikita Ivashkin, though, he's one of those guys that, he's got to get that first goal. 6 players had 2 points or more: Smith, Ray, Kirkby, and Stone, Jesse Anderson, and Stanko. But 5 more players had a point: Liam Anderson, Logar, Dustin Jesso, Walters, and Thompson. So that's 11 players that had a point or more in that game. That's pretty good. It's spreading out the wealth a little bit with the points and the goals, the assists, and things of that nature. That's a good sign. First game, good to see. Nikita Ivashkin had 4 shots on goal, looked good at moments, and did show some high skill, but I don't think we've seen his best play. Of course not. It's the first game. He had to sit the last, 28 games, whatever it was, at the end of last season. So we haven't seen good Nikita Ivashkin yet, but he had 4 shots on goal, and we'll take that. There was one play in the third period where he just poured it on. But, of course, their goaltender played really well. Netminder Nolan Egbert won in his debut, saving 32 and 35 shots. And I personally thought he looked good. Now, we're not going to see him this upcoming weekend. We are going to see the 2 other goalies. I think as long as they got 22-man roster, Coach Sherwood wants to see what he's got in these other 2 goalies. So more than likely you're going to see Connor Mack. And I just don't want to butcher the name, so I'm not even going to try. So Connor Mack will probably play Friday night. And Levecki will be in on Saturday. Now, obviously, this is knowledge that I'm passing along. I'm hoping that it sticks through, but we'll see. But that's what I think is expected, is those 2 goaltenders will get a shot. So Nolan Egbert, he can just work on his game a little bit in practice. We'll go from there, okay? Moving on, the mess at the end of the game. Okay, so at the end of the game, there was definitely some rough stuff. I think Brendan Stanko got, attacked from behind after a face-off. I mean, he literally turned around and he was heading the one way where the puck was, and the Elmira River Shark, I think his name was Poser or Posner. I probably said it wrong. Basically jumped him from behind, and it just got ugly. And I don't think that's the team that Tyler Jurich wants to coach. I don't think that's the team that Tyler Jurich would be proud of. So I personally don't think that we're going to see that from Elmira all the time. However, they probably started something now with Binghamton, rivalry-wise, that maybe wasn't even there last year with the Mammoth. But I think Coach Jurich has a lot. I mean, and this is why, and I'll be perfectly honest with you folks. If the rumors come true and he gets on the ice and he plays a few games or whatever it might be, bad idea. He needs to just rely on being a coach. He's got instinct and skill that he could pass along to players. And I think the best place for him is behind the bench. But hopefully he doesn't let his team do what they did at the end of that game. Now, that leads me to my next point, which is Coach Sherwood said to me he didn't want to see the 10-minute misconducts or the game misconducts, but Kirkby, Jesso, Ivashkin all got something. That's his 3 big players. He doesn't want to see that. Now, let's, take away Ivashkin's. He probably said something to the ref that he shouldn't have said after he basically got plummeted to the ice, and he complained about it, and then they threw the book at him, right? But I think because of what Elmira did at the end of that game, which is what to Stanko, which is why Kirkby, who basically, mouthed off to Jurich, Jurich got a penalty. There was a man coming off the bench penalty. his team just lost control. But I think that's what affected Jesso, and of course it affected Kirkby and, those guys, getting the boots and everything. That really, you can't hold it against Kirkby and Jesso. But Ivashkin's probably could have been controlled. Ivashkin just needs to get up and skate back and let Coach Sherwood talk to the referees. Let him be that voice in some cases. Or maybe even Kirkby goes over to a referee a little bit later on and says, "Hey, did you see what happened to my boy Nikita?" That type of thing. So my initial impressions of the game was happy that they scored. I think Coach Sherwood promised that this was going to be a team that could score. And they did in the first game, right? But it's one game of 58. We are 56. We have to see what happens the rest of the way. But I was impressed with the Lions. First of all, I thought the Lions were great. Okay. And we'll talk about that here in just a few seconds. But let's talk about Mac Lewis and Justin Semeraro. They both returned from loan. Noah Robinson and Noah Wild were released. So the two Noahs on the team were released. We didn't see either one of them play. Obviously, they were there through camp and through practices, but they did not play in Saturday's game. Mac Lewis and Justin Semeraro are back. What was interesting is that Quentin Roseboom was released. So that was interesting. I think probably just no interest, although he's a defenseman. I'm not sure what the situation is. I have not talked to Coach Sherwood about that at all. But Mac Lewis and Semeraro, you're going to see them in this weekend's games. I can guarantee you that. What does this do for the Lions for the upcoming weekend? Who's in and who's out? Okay, so let's talk about the Lions last week. First of all, you had Connor Smith, Brandon Stanko, and Thomas Ray. That was a great line. I think that line just clicked really well throughout the whole game. I don't think there was even a learning curve for Thomas Ray. I think he just fit in really well. I think all three of them had goals. So Connor Smith had 2, Stanko had 1, Thomas Ray had 1. That's 4 goals from one line. So they did really well there. I think Connor Smith was a +5 or Stanko was a +5. Andrew Logar was on a line with Tyson Kirkby and Austin Thompson. That was a decent line. Now, you know what really I got out of that line was more of the kind of the physical, they back-checked and forechecked really well. That's really what I saw out of that line. And I didn't expect that from Logar, but I think we got that from all three. And Thompson and Kirkby are tough guys. Don't get any, don't misconcern like being able to score and the assist. Both of those guys are tough guys on the ice. I wouldn't say they're overly physical in the sense that they're they don't antagonize other teams, but they can lay a check, they can forecheck, back check really well. And so that line was very interesting. It almost felt like a traditional fourth line, and you have one of those guys that can give you one of those clutch, heart and soul kind of goals. That's what that line felt like to me. And then you had the very interesting line. When I saw this line on paper or in the graphic when the Black Bears brought it out, I was like, whoa, wait a second here. You had Dustin Jesso, Fletcher, and Ivashkin on the same line. And then Gamatsov, he was the 10th forward, and he actually fit in. He would replace Fletcher a few times, 3, 4, maybe 5 times in the game. That was an interesting line, right? Because I think what you were really hoping for, what I think Coach probably went into this thinking was like, I'm going to have Jesso, who's tough and who can score. I have Ivashkin, who's fast and who can score. And Fletcher was flying all over the place. As a center, he was just all over the place, right? Speed. I guarantee he thought going into that game that those guys were going to score the 4 goals that Connor Smith, Stanko, and Ray scored, or at least match it, right? Now, there's 8 goals right there. And honestly, there were some people that watched the game against Elmira and thought, wait, this should have been 11, 12 goals, right? We had 61 shots on goal, and the fact that we only scored 7 was probably pretty amazing. So if you have those three lines built very similar like that, where you have one that's a hardworking line, that Smith, Stanko, Ray, hardworking, and they just produce because just everything was going their way. Then you have Logar, Kirkby, and Thompson, the tough line. They were gritty and they gutted out everything, and they still scored a couple goals, right? But then you have Jesso, Fletcher, and Ivashkin. They score a goal, right? But you thought they were going to be the speedy and very high-skilled line, and you still win 7-3. You don't really need a defense that is doing a lot. So who is out for Lewis and Samarero? How do you get those guys in? Maybe no one. The team was successful last week, right? But I can tell you by just some knowledge that I know that more than likely you're going to see a couple guys. Things are going to change around just a little bit. First of all, I don't think Connor Smith is available for this upcoming weekend, okay? At least that's what I'm reading from what I've got here, okay? Ivashkin and Fletcher will still be together, okay? So Jesso will move up with Stanko and Ray. Connor Smith ain't going to be probably there these two games, okay? So what you'll see is Ivashkin and Fletcher together with Samarero. You're going to see potentially, now this could change. What I'm saying here, Friday, when the lines come out, could be different. You never know. There's still two more practices. There's a Thursday practice and a game day skate on Friday, right? So Thompson, Kirkby, Lewis, potentially Jesso, Stanko, Ray, and we'll see who the 10th guy is, right? So now some of the news that happened this weekend or this morning, this afternoon, really, I guess you could say, right? Let me go to the Fed site. So Matthew Ballard was returned from the ECHL. J.C. Moritz, defenseman, was released. So you have one defenseman return and another defenseman is released with J.C. Moritz. I'm a little surprised. We had a great interview. He was very excited for this. And Chad Lopez has failed to report. So the failed to report is very interesting because it looks like Chad Lopez, who was released from his look-see that he was getting in the ECHL, and now the SPHL might come calling for Chad Lopez. So we'll see what happens there. So that's kind of like the news that came out this afternoon about those players. So you got Matthew Ballard, you got J.C. Moritz is released. Chad Lopez failed to report, but likely he could be here in a couple weeks if something doesn't stick in the SP, right? So what's interesting when we look at all this is what does that mean for the lines for defensemen, right? Do we see something different? Well, Jesse Anderson played on defense, and he's an offensive guy. He's very good. And I think I said on my Facebook post, I thought he was out of position a little bit, not because he was doing anything wrong. He is a natural forward, and he can move around, and he's got speed, and he's got skill, and his first intention is doing that. Well, him being matched up with JT Walters, I thought was really good. And it's a very good possibility he'll be there again. Liam Anderson and Stone will possibly be together. And then we got Weber and Ballard on defense. That's probably how the defensive pairings are going to possibly look, and or maybe even those are the six guys that'll probably be on defense this weekend. We'll see. We'll see how that all turns out. Again, there's still a practice and a game day skate, but this is what I'm getting so far. This upcoming week's games versus the 1-1 Danbury Hat-Tricks. Now, you're going to remember Danbury lost their first game against Watertown last week, and then they won game 2 last weekend. So they got a 1-1 record right now. Coach Sherwood has been waiting for this weekend and says his team will be ready. So we'll see how that all plays out. Binghamton last played the Hat Tricks in the Game 3 loss in the playoffs last season, which eliminated the Black Bears. All right, so we'll have game recaps after both games. I'll be at the arena on Saturday for the home game, my first home game since just before COVID. So I'm excited to get back and check out, obviously, the arena. It's been a while. I missed the arena. It's like a second home to me, so I'm very excited to do that. But I'm very excited. I'm glad that you guys are here to be able to listen to me interview Brooks Hill. Great interview. He's a great guy. He's got a great future ahead of him in broadcasting. And the YouTube broadcast this past weekend was really good. And I'm excited to see how it is in Danbury as well. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show is Director of Media Relations and Broadcasting right now for the Binghamton Black Bears. He is Brooks Hill. We'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers.
Hi, this is Brandon Buczynski.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. I'm very excited to have this gentleman on with us. He comes to us from the Binghamton Black Bears. He is their Director of Broadcasting and Media Relations. He is Brooks Hill. Brooks, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you about a week ago at Media Day and get to talk to you for a little bit. You're probably one of the busiest guys in the team on the staff, probably leading up to the start of the season. I could only imagine how busy you were, but thank you very much for coming on. I wanted to wait until we got through the first game and everything and give you some time to breathe and relax a little bit, but thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. Big fan of the show. Always make it a point of mine to listen every week and, maybe pick up on some things that I had missed going on around the league the week before.
Brooks, let's talk a little bit about, you're from Wake Forest, North Carolina, and, obviously a different part of the country. I wouldn't say it's completely south, but it's south from here and everything. When I think of south, I think of Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, states like that and everything. Talk to us a little bit about the difference that you have really kind of had to get used to between North Carolina and New York. Other than the weather, we know that's a little bit warmer, a little bit sunnier down there in North Carolina than it is here in Binghamton, New York sometimes. But what are the other differences?
I think people drive faster up here a little bit, and it's funny. I was talking with my roommate, and it's really funny to see how, every time it snows, how many snowplows are out on the road, and they all say, Broome County or City of Binghamton, government snowplows.
Yeah,
that's unheard of in North Carolina.
Really?
The DOT does not own a snowplow. All snowplowing is all private, and it's kind of flip-flops. Our sanitation and garbage collection is all through the county, not privatized.
I never thought about. I never thought about stuff like that. I didn't even realize it was that different. North Carolina also used to have what they would call, I think in Pennsylvania, they called them the blue laws, where you couldn't buy alcohol in grocery stores. Is that still the case down there?
No, it's not.
Okay.
You can get beer and wine in a grocery store, but anything else, they actually run through. And funny, in North Carolina, they run through the ABC store.
Okay.
So, like, all of your hard stuff, you have to go to a, I guess, county-regulated and operated store. Again, something different than, like, a private store like up here.
Yeah, we're up here. You could go to a lemonade stand and probably get it spiked and everything. Talk a little bit about growing up in Wake Forest. What was it like? I know you played lacrosse. You were a hockey fan at an early age as well, and everything. And there's some differences between lacrosse and hockey, but there's some parallels that I think people obviously can make as well when it comes to lacrosse and hockey. But what was it like growing up in Wake Forest? Obviously a historic part of North Carolina. The college started there, moved to Winston-Salem eventually, and everything. Talk a little bit about growing up in Wake Forest.
Oh, well, so I'm an only child.
Mm-hmm.
My parents have now been married 32 years. So I lived in Wake Forest my entire life until I went to college at ECU. Played, like you said, football and lacrosse in high school and middle school, some club and some school ball, and very active in the church youth group back home at Wake Forest Baptist. And I have some great friends to this day who I talk with over text or Snapchat or Instagram every single day from high school, college, back home. Just all the old neighborhood kids getting together. Always loved sports. But funny enough, never wanted to play like organized team sports as a kid because I was always afraid of messing up and the coach yelling at me. So like I didn't play my first team sport until I was in 5th grade.
And that was lacrosse or football?
That was flag football. I was on my first lacrosse team when I was in 7th grade.
Gotcha. And you were talking to me off air beforehand. You really love lacrosse. I mean, there's a passion for lacrosse that you have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is truly, it's the fastest game on 2 feet. Non-stop action, especially with the way that they've modified some of the rules since I've been in middle school to where they are now. But I've always loved it. It's a good sport for somebody like me who is undersized. To really, you can use your body as a weapon. You don't have to be a big, muscular bodybuilding kind of size to see any playing time on the field. And there's a spot for you on lacrosse. If, you work hard, you can make some cuts and you can hit little speed bursts like in 20-yard increments. And it's great hand-eye exercise. And I think it's helped me and across different sports as I did other things in college, intramurals, things like that. But I truly love it. And like you said, it is similar to the way of the attacking style of trying to score is really similar to hockey. You get space behind the net, unlike basketball or soccer.
Sure.
And, you have guys who specialize in playing defense. You have guys specializing playing offense. You have your lefties, your righties, and it's good to have a balance of those, like, on your team in both sports. And I think if people haven't gotten the chance to, go see lacrosse in person or, spend some time watching college or the PLL on TV, I would be very surprised if they came back and said that, oh, hey, like, that's kind of similar, especially, like, with all the hitting that you can do, too.
And you were telling me a little bit earlier as well about when you became a hockey fan, and obviously being down in North Carolina, you can't become a hockey fan and not be a Hurricanes fan. For you, when it came to learning about hockey and just kind of getting into the game and starting to enjoy it and whatnot, Tell everyone about the age that you started kind of getting into hockey and watching hockey.
Yeah, so the Hurricanes won the Cup in the 05-06 season,
Mm-hmm.
and my first game that I ever went to was in the 06-07 year.
Mm-hmm.
I probably made the mistake of never watching a game on TV before I went to a game, so, my little, I believe, second grade, mind really couldn't handle maybe how fast the puck was moving and keep up with it for a good understanding. But, they played Wayne Gretzky's Arizona Coyotes at the time and lost 2-0. And I just remember getting a Rod Brindamore shirt from the store. And from then on, I was really hooked, and it became routine watching all 82 games every year until we started going more consistently. I started spending my own money once I was working a job at 16, and when I was back home from college, everything like that. And I've always been in love with the game of hockey ever since I went back in second grade.
Yeah, and then obviously you chose to go to college, and broadcasting became a thing. Now you still played college lacrosse, correct?
Yes, sir. I went to East Carolina University in Greenville.
Yep.
It's about an hour and 15 minutes east of Raleigh, about 77 miles away. And I played all 4 years at ECU, but I didn't start really doing anything related to radio or broadcasting besides your typical classes.
Sure.
In a journalism major until junior year when I became an intern at Pirate Radio, which is like a local station right next to campus. It wasn't student radio. A lot of people get confused about that. It's like, it was student radio that you worked on. It's like, oh no, it's a real, real tower, real station. Man, I'm trying to remember the call letters. WBLX, I think, is one of them, because they have two towers, one in Greenville and one in Washington, or Little Washington, as they say in Greenville.
I think it was WDLX. That's what I see in the press release from when you got hired with the Black Bears.
Yep.
WDLX in Greenville. So wait, so you're telling me you didn't really get the broadcasting bug until your junior year of college?
Well, I think that was when that's when I started getting the experience for it. I always knew I wanted to be involved in sports media.
Gotcha.
Fun fact, back in the day, I used to have the 2006 Carolina Hurricanes Stanley Cup champion DVD.
Oh.
And my mom had a Chevy Suburban, and that would be the only DVD in there. And every single day, I would watch the same DVD and just pause it. And whenever we got back in the car, pick it back up. It was at the point where I think I had the entire DVD memorized word for word. And you go through the regular season, then each round of the playoffs for them. And each Stanley Cup final game against Edmonton had its own episode in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it drove my parents crazy. But they say that's where they knew that broadcasting was going to be something for me. Truth be told, I really didn't want to do broadcasting probably until junior year of high school. I wanted to be an athletic trainer.
Sure.
Because I was taking athletic training as a sophomore. And I had come to the terms that, hey, I'm probably not going to be a professional athlete. It's just not in the cards for me. So
Brooks, we all go through that. We all have that moment in our high school career where we're like, yeah, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, well, luckily for me, we had a great athletic trainer at my high school, and he would teach it was an elective class. And I really enjoyed it a whole lot. And, he was talking to me about it. It's like, hey, this is what I had to do to, get certified. And it's like, you got to go to undergrad. Then you got to get your master's. And then you got to, try to get residency with a school and everything like that. It's like, you got to take all these science classes. And I was like, oh, man, science is not my thing. So then the next year I took journalism instead of athletic training again.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh, can you write a story about the Powder Puff game, like next Saturday?" And I was like, "Okay." Turned it in to the teacher. Norma Weekman was her name, and she was like, "Oh, I have another Austin in my class who Austin was like the first like guy who did broadcasting and did PA at the school while he was still in high school. He's like, you can write sports technically, and like that's something we haven't had in a couple of years." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So take journalism again the next year as a senior, thinking, "Hey, that was a pretty fun class. I got an A in it. Like, wasn't too hard of a work, and you know, you only get like stressed like once or twice a year, like trying to make a deadline, but pretty neat." And then I get pulled out of class on like the second Monday of the school year, and I'm thinking, what did I do wrong already that I'm getting a talk to in the hallway? And I'm just running all the scenarios in my head, like, how am I going to tell my parents I got in trouble already? And because I was a good kid in school. And she was like, "We're going to make you sports editor this year. And, like, you'll get honors credit for it." And I was like, oh, my gosh. And I banged a locker so hard that it popped open. Like, I was just so pumped up. And I was like, okay, like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to do sports journalism. And I guess I just got good at talking fast.
Well, it definitely helps with obviously calling hockey games and everything. So talk about the phone call or the email or however you found out about Binghamton. Obviously, the first year of the Binghamton Black Bears, Rob Lapolis, who was here with the Binghamton Devils. He interned with Grady, with the Binghamton Senators, and kind of went off on his own for a little bit. I think he was down in Texas for a little bit, El Dorado, and then finally made his way back here. He gets the call to go to the ECHL with the Adirondack Thunder, and then all of a sudden, boom, now we have Brooks Hill. Talk a little bit about that phone call, that message. How did you find out that you were coming up here?
Yeah, so funny enough, I applied for a job on a team, let's just say, is no longer a part of the league. Let's leave it at that.
Fair enough.
And I went through the interview and had a second interview, and then they said, "We want you to come up to X location for the weekend, meet the owners, everything like that. And like, you have a place to stay, everything like that." I was like, "Oh, cool. Like, are you going to pay for my flight up there?" And they're like, "No. But like, you have a place to stay, like, when you get back." And I was like, okay, like, red flag starting to go off a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like, hey, send some follow-up emails. Like, hey, like, can you talk to me about the, about the salary and everything like that? I was like, oh, that's something you can talk to with the owners, like, once you get up here. And it's like, you guys are withholding a ton of information before I even get up here.
Makes you nervous, right?
Yeah, very. So I reached out to a guy you might know. His name is Drew Blevins.
Oh, yep.
He used to be the play-by-play and PR guy for the Carolina Thunderbirds, and then Fayetteville Marksman, and now he's over in the ECHL like Rob, but he is over in Rapid City,
right,
with the Flames affiliate. And we had worked together in the past in baseball because he was filling in for my mentor one night, and he was like, "Oh, like, he's in hockey. Like, you ought to give Drew a call." I was like, okay, I did. Went to voicemail, got nervous, and I was like, okay, like, I got to get to decision time. Drew calls me back, and we have like a 20-minute conversation, and basically it boiled down to, "Brooks, I know you want to work in hockey. You don't want to work in hockey this bad for this job." And I was like, okay. And I'm kind of bummed out because at this point I have not had a full-time job yet. I'm at 24. 2 years out of college. The pandemic, got me a little bit of leniency from my parents, but it's like, hey, like, what are you doing? I was working part-time as a traffic producer, like, at a local station in Raleigh, doing some other stuff for them, coaching lacrosse. So I was working 3 part-time jobs just to make some money, but, like, didn't have that full-time job or anything like that. He says, hey, I know a job that's going to open up in the same league in Binghamton, New York next week. I know the guy who used to have the job, and I know the owner. He's like, I'll put in a good word for you. Nice. I was like, okay. And sure enough, a couple of days go by, get an email from Rob Lapolis, and he's like, hey, are you still looking for a job in hockey? And I was like, yes, I am. He's like, okay, I'll pass it on to our owner. Andre says, oh, like, hey, like, yeah, interview, calls me. Said he's actually going to be with Rob Lapolis, the guy who used to have the job. Like, I told him he had to be the one interviewing people for it.
Right.
So I have a call with Rob that goes about for like 45 minutes. And then, sure enough, I go downstairs. I'm still living at home with my parents. Talk to them about how it went. It's like, well, you were on the phone for a while, so maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And while I'm explaining to them about how the conversation went, Andreas texts me and says, hey, Rob liked you, so we're going to offer you the job. Can you start on this date? I was like, whoa.
Which you didn't have much time to get up here. I mean, because I know Rob was still working the job up until very close to September before all of a sudden, boom, he's got to go, obviously, to Adirondack or go up to Glens Falls and everything. So you didn't have much time from finding out when you had it before you got up here.
Yeah, that's correct, Bob. And, all of this takes place in the month of September.
Yeah.
So, like, I think they had a preseason game that I think, like, in the grand scheme of things, I think Andreas probably wanted me to go and do, like, the preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the day I ended up moving up here. I moved up October 1st. My first day in the office was October 3rd, and we played October 14th at home against Elmira back when they were the Mammoth. But it was a very quick turnaround. Like, as soon as I, said, okay, like, I'm going to do this,
How did you not have a panic attack within those couple weeks of getting here before getting on, doing that first broadcast? How did you not have panic attack? I mean, I know me. I was like, if I only had a couple weeks to basically learn a whole roster, basically learn a whole new, audio setup, and everything. What people don't realize is, especially with YouTube and having a radio station this year, obviously, no radio station makes things a little bit simpler and everything, probably in the grand scheme of things. But you had to come up here in 2 weeks, learn a roster, meet a staff that you'd never met before and everything. Because the one guy you talked to probably the longest, Rob, he's gone and everything, right? And you had a couple conversations with Andreas. I can't imagine. To me, it's a very difficult thing to do what you did so quickly. And then I think within a few games, you had it down pretty good.
Oh, thank you. I do appreciate it. I know opening night was very rough, and to this day, I'm petrified to go back and watch that game because I don't want to put myself through the misery of how I sounded then and then the way that everything was. But you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, there was not a lot of time to learn the roster and get the pronunciation, spend time around the guys, trying to find any storyline that you can get. It was just kind of, people are, this guy was on the team last year, this guy's pretty good, this guy's going to get cut next week, so you don't need to spend too much time on it.
Yep.
We have, first day in the office was Monday. We have a coach's show at Tully's on Thursday. Also, Josh can't be there to produce it, so you have to learn how to set up all the audio equipment and the video and everything like that. That was a wild ride. And then the week of the game, me, Trevor, from the front office who does corporate sales and the game operations, along with Bobby who does the ticket sales.
Right.
We're all hanging the new advertisement signs and all the dashers in the arena after practice every day. So we were spending so much time on all the other stuff. And I don't want to make an excuse for myself, is I didn't get a ton of time to be the most prepared that I could be. And I feel like that week I was carrying homework every single day, trying to email people that used to be one of Rob's clients, just being introducing myself to them and at the time, talking to all the iHeart people, being like, oh, hey, we still need this commercial and everything like that. Like, can you test the device right now? I'd never worked with a Convex machine before.
Yeah.
I'd always just used a simple audio mixer.
Yep.
So that was new. I had done work with ESPN Plus prior, but for that, if you're fortunate enough that all you have to do is show up with your notes, and you can go from there. Like, they have your headset, they got all your cameras, they mix all the audio, everything like that. I remember the last game I did for Duke University is the guy was in the football center on campus, and we were over on East Campus where the field hockey complex is, and he was producing and changing the cameras, everything like that, from a couple miles away. So it was I think the best thing for me was to not show everybody, like, that I'm freaked out, and maybe it's kind of like bottling up on the inside a little bit, but I think it was I think it's, being in sports kind of makes you ready for a moment like that. Like, hey, sometimes you only have 10 seconds and you need a goal. Okay, like, are you going to panic as soon as the referee blows the whistle? Or do you just kind of stay calm and, do what the coach said, and if it works out, it works out. If not, hey, it's okay, whatever, move on, next one. I think that was kind of the mentality I had at the beginning.
You're absolutely right. I remember in January of 2011, I'd already been doing the show for about 7 years, almost 6.5 seasons done of the show. So, getting interviews and stuff was really easy to do and everything at that point and whatnot. I get a phone call. The Manchester Monarchs were here in Binghamton, New York. I get a phone call from Ken Kale, who was the Manchester Monarchs broadcaster for every single game. And he calls me up and he goes, Bobby. I was like, hey, Ken, how you doing? Are you guys in town? He's like, yeah. You going to be at the game tonight? I was like, yeah. He goes, can you put a suit on? I was like, why? He's like, well, I want you to call the game with me. And this was at about 4:30 in the afternoon, and obviously game time in Binghamton is always 7:05 and everything. And of course, was I prepared? Did I have notes in front of me for the game to be a color commentator? Absolutely not. But that's the way it goes sometimes in sports broadcasting. You get opportunities, and sometimes you got, a week to get ready for a whole season, or you have 3 hours to get ready for a game when you've never done it before and everything. And I remember afterwards he said, oh, so this is the first time you've ever done this? I was like, yeah. He goes, I wouldn't have known. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, I am sweating so bad. I cannot wait to take this jacket off. And it was middle of January, and it was like, I don't know, probably like 30 degrees, maybe even less than that out there. So I totally get what you went through. My next question is, when did you start having fun? Because that's the hardest part is getting rid of all the stress, taking away all that stuff. And when you're doing stuff like this, like for me right now, I'm having fun talking to you about hockey and about broadcasting and stuff like that. When did you start having fun that first season?
Well, I'm having fun talking to you too, Bob. Let's get that squared away.
Nice.
I would probably have to say around New Year's Eve.
So it took you a couple months to really get into it and have fun.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there were moments like where I had fun, like with people in the office, and
sure,
everybody being so close in age to each other. It kind of feels almost like an extension of college sometimes. Like we're all just like in grad school together, and it's like, oh yeah, we're also running a hockey organization at the same time.
Yeah.
But actually talking about the games, I think when Alex Jones came on and started hopping on color, and I got to stop doing it by myself at home.
There you go.
I think that was really big because I'm not having to constantly do, analysis, ad read, and play-by-play all through the night. And I don't want to sound like a suck-up, but when Coach Sherwood came in, me and him hit it off very well with each other. I remember we were on the way to Watertown. Mm-hmm. It was his first game. And Andreas had texted me saying, hey, can you remind the guys on the bus that we have the New Year's Eve party tomorrow night after the game, being on the 31st at the on a restaurant in downtown Binghamton. And so I'm sitting up at the front of the bus like the media members do.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey guys, just a reminder. And I expected not everybody to listen. I had a couple of eyes, but Brant just screamed, "Everybody, shut up!" It's like, when somebody from the front office is talking, you guys are going to listen.
Yep.
And I was like, whoa. And then it was dead quiet. And then I gave my spiel, and then everybody was at the restaurant the next night for New Year's Eve. And it was pretty solid. And, we spent a lot of time together on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Like fostering a relationship, everything like that. We got to go with him to Chicago. So me and him have turned out to have a great friendship. We don't see eye to eye on everything. Sometimes he tells me stuff that he's going to do, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's different. I wouldn't do that. But, I think a lot of people just think, oh, everybody disagrees with everything that he does. Like, well, that's not true. Like, sometimes I don't, but,
yeah. And it's okay to disagree, and especially if you do it in a respectful way, or you have that kind of relationship or that communication where you can, respectfully disagree. It's okay to have that. And I unfortunately, in our world today, I think people have forgotten how to disagree with each other in a respectful manner, unfortunately, and everything. And it's good that you can have that. I know my conversations with Coach Sherwood recently have been, interesting, and I'm learning a lot more about him. I've had him on the show a couple times. I've talked to him and everything. And, I find his enjoyment of the game and his excitement for certain players and, being successful, very infectious. I think if someone has a criticism towards the coach, thinking that he makes every single decision about every single player or whatever, he's wrong. That's one of the things I noticed about you last year. You actually stood up for certain situations that were being talked about either on Facebook or whatever. It's like people have to realize the coach is not the be-all, end-all of every single player decision that's out there. Sometimes it's the player. Sometimes it's an ownership. Sometimes it's even beyond that and everything. And I like the fact that you felt comfortable enough near the end of the season to start really kind of, I don't want to say defending a friend or a colleague or whatever, but you spoke up and you had an opinion, but you did it in a respectful way because, unfortunately, when you do make comments like that, you're talking to your fan base and everything. But in the same regard, I think it was deserved.
Well, thank you. And it definitely did. I wouldn't have been able to do that at the beginning of the year. That's for sure.
No.
But really, I would think like once we kind of, hit our stride, once we got done with the Southern road trip, and we got back and we made that like final push towards the playoffs, went on that win streak. Those are the games that I pulled from for my demo tape to update it every year. Because that's when I felt like me and Alex had like the best chemistry after doing games solo for 2 weeks straight. That we kind of came back and we had that good game against Elmira for Stock Out Cancer, and then we had first responder night against Columbus. And we had a good end to the season, and then when we brought Cole on to do a 3-person broadcast for the playoffs against Watertown, that's when those are the 2 to 3 week slates that I think I was enjoying it the most. And it was just really unfortunate that it ended the way it did in Danbury. And I remember I was starting to get a little emotional about oh man, we had come this far, everything like that, and that's how I was honestly wiping my eyes a little bit. Not going to say crying, so that's not true, but getting choked up a little bit as the handshakes were going on.
Yeah,
and you're like, hey, I just completed a season where I moved 8 hours away from anybody that I know. Mm-hmm. My parents are back at home. All of my close friends are relatively in the still North Carolina, South Carolina area, and I'm the person who's so far away. So that was just a culmination of feelings and everything like that, because I'm not the only one working hard in the office. Kelsey and Julia last year, Trevor, Bobby, Alex, EJ now on our graphics. Like, everybody works so hard, and I think some people don't understand like how few people we actually have there on a daily basis, like doing this thing called hockey.
Putting it all on, yeah, without a doubt.
So
the decision to the first time in I think 46 years in Binghamton to not have a radio station broadcasting hockey. I know you mentioned it during the game last week, and even probably commented that, I know some people may not be happy about this, but we're YouTube only this year and everything. Was that, I don't know if that was a decision that was made by Andreas, the radio station, or whatever, but I got to be honest with you, when I watched the broadcast on YouTube, it went really well. The commercials for the breaks was nicely done. And the best part about it was it didn't seem like it was a radio broadcast trying to be put onto YouTube. It felt like finally a broadcast that was meant for visual as much as anything else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yes, it does. And, thank you for the kind words, because, Josh, our video director, also does he's a wizard. I say it all the time at Tully's. Josh is a wizard. He's been working for the hockey team for many years, and now he's a firefighter with the Johnson City Fire Department. So he's always staying busy, and when we get him in the building, and he's always helping out, he makes things so much easier. I don't feel like he's talking down to me, and he's not making me feel dumb when he's like explaining stuff to me on like how to do certain things. Like, we were walking through how to set up the equipment for the road broadcast this year, because something that we haven't had is video on the road. And the way that we came to the decision to do YouTube only, and me and Andreas met during the off season multiple times, and quite frankly, we weren't happy with the radio station not fulfilling on their end on some of the things. When they went through a personnel change on who technically oversaw our account, we were not notified about who the new person was. So I was sending dead emails out to somebody trying to communicate with them, and nobody was responding. We never got the ratings to let us know how many people are listening to our games. Whereas YouTube, it'll tell us exactly how many people are listening at the current moment, how many people have listened, and how many people have watched it after the game has ended. And unfortunately, with no way to track how many people are listening on the radio, we kind of saw it as a sunk cost where, hey, like, we can just do video only if we can get some other teams in the league to kind of step it up a little bit and like commit to, hey, everybody does YouTube, and if we let you do it in our arena where we do have very nice equipment, can you let us do it in your arena? And like you said, some people have said that they're upset that we're not doing it on the radio because they don't have a smartphone, or they're a one computer household with access to YouTube. But
I also think it's I think it's the combination of obviously those type of parameters, but at the same time, there are so many people that just would turn on the radio broadcast and listen, and like if they were at work or driving in the car, you turn on the radio. There's Brooks and the Black Bears, or Grady and the Senators, or Roger Neal, and but that's the past, and the future is what makes sense. One of the things that I don't think fans truly understand, that you and I understand, is something you just brought up, which is the quantifiable numbers that you can get from YouTube and use that to sell to your advertisers is much better than the radio, that you really don't get a good, true sense of how many people are really listening. And I think that's important, and I think that's probably one of the big reasons why you guys made the decision that you did.
Yeah, I agree. And, technology has a way of, kind of evolving. We've seen there was a time where you weren't watching sports on television. You could only get it on radio, and then they started putting them on television. And now we have, streaming where I can watch the Hurricanes play every single game, even though I'm 8 hours away from their arena.
So, Brooks, before I let you go, let's talk a little bit about this current team. They won the game 7-3 against the Elmira River Sharks. I know there are people in Elmira still looking for a shark in the Susquehanna and Shenango Rivers. You're not going to find any, guys. It's okay. It's okay. But it was a good game, I thought, for the Black Bears. I thought Nolan Egbert played really well in net, his first pro game. I really liked the line combinations. I know with some players coming back from the SP, the lines will kind of shift a little bit again as, Coach Sherwood's trying to find it. What were your thoughts on that first game?
I predicted that it was going to be 6-2, so I was one off on each side.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to be 10-1 like it was a year before. And quite honestly, I'm kind of glad because that forces me to stay locked in a little bit longer. And then I thought that the guys played very well. I think that a lot of people had concern about all these people on this team haven't ever played a game in the Fed. Well, truth be told, I don't think that really means too much. A lot of these guys were in a disciplined system for 4 years right before they came here.
Yeah.
Where, they're going to class every day, they're going to practice, they're lifting weights, everything like that. They're on a routine, and now they just get to play hockey. And I think the true rookies really showed out really good. I love that Brendan Stanko finally got his first goal as a Black Bear.
Yep.
I absolutely love the line of Ray, Stanko, and Smith.
That was great.
I think this is gonna air. Obviously, this is airing after the game, but I was going around telling everybody this is the line that's going to be the dominant line. And Stanko +5, Smith 4 points, Tommy Ray first goal as a pro. Kid was working at Home Depot a couple years ago and gets scouted and is like, hey, you should come to the Binghamton Black Bears free agent camp at a rink in Florida. Like, this is a great story. I think other guys like, Thompson, Kirkby, even though they scored, they're take time, and they're still going to be like heavy lifters on the squad. But it was really good to see those guys, like the young guys, really shine on night one, because I think that was what a lot of people had the most concern about.
I think it went well. I'm excited for this weekend's games against Danbury. You guys go to Danbury on Friday night, and then host the Danbury Hat Tricks in Binghamton, obviously, on Saturday night. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Danbury is a lot different than they were. I know the head of the ship is still there, Bill McCurry, who is a great coach and puts in good systems. But they had a lot of movement as well. And it'll be very interesting. And, of course, Dustin Jesseau will get to play against his former team. And let's see if that lights a fire under his butt a little bit. He had the goal against the Elmira last week, which is great and everything. But it'll be interesting to see how they do against Danbury. And I know when I talked to Coach Sherwood in his office on Media Day, one of the things that he said to me was, because I asked him, I said, when you saw the schedule, you saw that first game against Danbury, did you circle it? And he just looked at me, and he had a big smile on his face. He said, oh, yeah, I'm ready for that game.
I think a lot of them are. I was talking to Brendan last night at the coaches show, and he only played the last 5 games of the regular season last year. Danbury wasn't a part of that, and he had a family situation come up where he knew that he was not going to be able to participate in the playoffs for the Black Bears. So his playoff spot went to somebody else, which a lot of people don't also understand. Like, why is so-and-so not playing? Yep. Like, hey, there's more that goes on into it that we can tell people at the time. But he actually never played. Like, he's like, I've never played Danbury. I've only seen it on video. He's like, I want it. He's like, I want to go to there. Like, I want to see the Animal House. Like, we're going into there, and like, we're the villains. Like, that night.
Yeah.
And like we're the villains, and then we turn right around on Saturday, and then we're the heroes. It's just so cool, like how that works. That was a really neat perspective. Like, you don't see too many people being like, I want to be the villain.
Yeah.
Like, I want them yelling at me nonstop.
And then
I thought it was neat.
And then the next day, you're the hero and everything. Especially if they come back and they win, obviously, in Binghamton on Saturday. Hopefully, they win both games against Danbury. It's about time we got our piece when it comes to the Danbury hat tricks. Brooks, thank you very much for coming on. Obviously, fans, if you want to hear Brooks, you basically got to watch the game, and it's on YouTube. So just go to the new Binghamton Black Bears YouTube page. Check them out every single weekend, every Friday and Saturday at least for most of the season and everything. They're going to do the road games this year, which is pretty cool. Brooks, thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. Anytime. Looking forward to hopping back on later in the season.
Awesome. He is Brooks Hill from the Binghamton Black Bears, and we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. I want to thank everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. Second episode of season number 13, our lucky season 13. And I'm just really excited that everybody is tuning in, following us on Power Play Post Show's Facebook page, and just really enjoying this season already. The Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast and subscribe. I also want to ask you, please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Go to Facebook and search for the Power Play Post Show and share any of our show posts to all your friends. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And thank you to Rob Lapolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, and our guest this week, Brooks Hill. Folks, enjoy the games this weekend against the Danbury Hat Tricks. And fans, if any of you are going down to Danbury, just always remember, be respectful when you're in their rink, as you would expect us to, people to be respectful. Remember Wilkes-Barre and Rochester coming in. Just be respectful when you go into their rink, like you would want those guys, or Danbury now, coming into our rink like always. And be safe, number one, and let's hope that the Black Bears can secure 2 more wins this weekend. Thanks for listening to the Power Play Post Show. We'll talk to you guys again next week.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.